Live from a studio in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Your host of At the Edge, Boo Lamb.
Well, hello, DevCentral community. My name is Boo, Solutions Architect with DevCentral, one of your hosts of the shows that we have here on this channel. Today's show is At the Edge. So thank you for joining us. We have a couple more shows for the rest of the month that I'll talk about a little bit later. But this particular show, we're on our second episode at this point. And I wanted to kind of reiterate what the purpose of this particular show is, which is educating all of our F5 community on the topics around edge computing. And right now in the industry, this is a huge deal right now. A lot of people are re-architecting their applications to modern applications. What that has allowed for is to be able to take advantage of different architectures like edge computing and to be able to say, okay, certain parts of this application, maybe this is going to be better served if it's closer out to where the clients are. And so that's what's happening in the industry now. And at F5, that's where a lot of investment has happened. So in the past year, we've actually made a number of investments, but a huge investment has been the Volterra platform. That's what we're going to talk about today. And this Volterra platform is going to allow us to build out those edge architectures, be able to put components of an application closer out to the end users, whatever that application might be. So maybe it's an IoT use case, and we need to one conversation that I've had with one of my colleagues is how there's firms that have sensors that need to be able to collect data, and so hey, it's great if we can actually use some more distributed computing and push out some of this computing out to the edge and be able to have those sensors actually talk to something without it having to traverse the world and find a local region for cloud computing. So really cool architectures that this is enabling now. And hopefully through watching the show, you'll be able to learn a lot more about that technology and get yourself up to speed, because I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do here is just get everyone up to speed on what the latest and greatest stuff kind of is. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest here because, and I'll talk about this a little bit quickly, but we're going to be talking about how you can get up to speed on Volterra specifically really quickly. And so Nick and his team have actually put together a number of things that are allowing people to ease that transition and learn those things really quickly. So again, this show is going to be all about that. So if you like those topics, hit like on this video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're not on YouTube right now, you might be watching from LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Head over to the YouTube and you can subscribe on there. And we have these conversations on devcentral.f5.com as well. So I will go ahead and pull myself off for a second, and we'll come back with Nick. Nick, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing? Good to see you.
I am good, thanks. Sorry, my computer. I was just complaining about this a little bit before, but my computer is going a little bit mushy right now. But I'm glad that worked out and you're on right now. So thank you for joining us, Nick. You are part of a company called Upmix. You work for F5 with F5 primarily, but why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm one of the principals at Upmix. Our company builds a lot of technical content, demos, interactive experiences, videos, and we kind of bridge the gap between marketing on one side and technology on the other. And we try to come up with really interesting things like guides, labs, walkthrough documents. And we were fortunate enough to be exposed to Volterra before the acquisition, and this was a great opportunity to offer some of the kind of skills that our team has to build out some cool guides. And in the end, we're really happy to contribute to the open source projects that these guides had become.
Oh, that's awesome. Maybe we can talk about that too. I mentioned it in talking up this show beforehand, but you guys were responsible for a lot of simulator.f5.com. A lot of people aren't familiar with that. Check it out. Simulator.f5.com allows you to actually walk through really easily a lot of F5 technologies that may or may not be a little bit more challenging to kind of jump straight into, and you guys have bridged that gap or close that gap, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up. I think, when we talk to our customers, one of the challenges is standing up an environment or, logging in, signing up, and getting a hands-on experience. So, on one side, typically people have a video, like a video demo, which is really nice because it explains to you, usually with a voiceover, somebody walks you through the experience, what you can do end to end. But on the other hand, is a live demo, which is always the best. And wouldn't it be nice to kind of integrate the best of the both worlds? So we created this simulator technology, which allows us to uh, essentially simulate most of the hands-on experience for things that matter, but still have that linear experience of accomplishing a task. So solving a use case or trying to come up with some kind of a very pointy customer scenario. So we've put a number of these simulators for F5 and some other customers we work with, but they really allow you to very quickly just get hands on with the technology. And F5 has been awesome at allowing us to mess around with Nginx, cloud services, Volterra, some of the other partner technologies. So some of these things that we'll be talking about today, really easy way to get started, just heading over to simulatorf5.com and just picking Volterra and just hopping on and exploring some of the use cases there in an interactive way.
Yeah, awesome. I'll just bring it up here really quickly. So there's a number of things that you can play with on here. There are Volterra pieces to it, but it's going to be a little bit different from what you'll show today around Volterra. This stuff is a lot more guided, and there's a lot more stuff that you can do with the stuff you'll show, right?
Yeah, the difference really is if you were to um, go through this is a simulated experience, so you don't run anything live. However, you enter data as if you would in the Volterra console, known as Vault console. There's even interactive simulated shell scripts, so you can interact with Kubernetes clusters or deploy a workload to Volterra Global Network, which is one of the other use cases. So here in the simulator, you can try the different pieces of or different use cases that Volterra solves. By contrast, what we'll be talking about is more of a hands-on, like actual deployment and the guide what you'd go through and do a lot of these things that you would do in a simulator environment very quickly, but you do it actually going step by step, and like any lab, have a full lab experience, full hands-on experience, just to get you to that level 101. And I must preface that I am actually not a highly technical person by comparison to some of the folks on my team who are incredible, and they are doing magical things for me. And it's like Arthur Clarke's quote, where any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. For me, this is magic. Most of the time, I'm like, wow, this is just incredible. Like, you do a bunch of stuff and you follow a bunch of scripts and run some Terraform scripts, and then bam, you get an infrastructure from scratch that is really representative of a customer scenario, and that's like, it's incredible to me. So I'm fortunate to work with those folks and also try my hand at it. So I kind of feel good about kicking some tires, and I feel good about like me being a technologist, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's super cool. Maybe we can segue over to discussing those guided walkthroughs at this point. So I'll first throw up this link here. So if anybody wants to follow along, there's a DevCentral article that kind of encompasses what's going to happen with these guided walkthroughs. But I think you touched on this before when you talked about simulators, is that there's a bit of a gap between, okay, we want to build this, we want to show people how to build this and educate them on this, but there's a lot of pieces that you might not have in place, or it might take time to provision those pieces. So I think in the case of the Volterra stuff, you need to have a Volterra account, which isn't too hard to do, but then you need to have a few other things that you guys outline as well. And so you guys kind of encompass that, right? And kind of walk people through getting that part at least sorted out, specifying what people need, and then getting them through the guided walkthrough really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to just give somebody a hello world experience with something like this, right?
Mm.
Because the Volterra can do so many things, right? It could address multi-cloud networking scenarios, which are kind of like the core and really incredible things that you can do connecting multiple clouds. But there is no reason to connect across multiple clouds for just a hello world use case, right? So you want to come up with something that you typically see customers experiencing. For example, a distributed application or enterprise app where you have multiple services and multiple clouds. And these services have to talk to each other, but one way, not the other way. You'd need to, for example, enable egress or enable get methods versus get and post. So you need to configure your service topology in a very particular way, and that's what we try to reflect with some of these guides. Is we try to figure out a scenario, and we luckily had experience building out multiple actual real applications, enterprise apps. So we took that and encapsulated it into a very representative customer scenario, and that's the scenario that we have here in the guide, and used in multiple guides. And I guess folks at F5 like it too because it's it's like the Microsoft Contoso equivalent, but a little bit more, year 2021 and 2022, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great throwback, is the Contoso
Yeah,
stuff. I just
Northwind traders for those of us
Yeah,
going
that's
further back.
hilarious. Oh, that's hilarious. Anybody who, like, I have my MCSE 2000. Anybody that was from back then would, I don't know what the current MCSE stuff is,
Oh,
but
that's incredible.
I
I mean,
remember
the,
typing
the,
in
the funny
Contoso
thing
a
is that
lot.
there are hundreds of those applications and domain names that were purchased by Microsoft. And having worked at Microsoft, I remember just going through the lists and figuring out, like, is Trek Cycles really the good example for what we're trying to show here with a mobile app, or is it like something else Contoso-ish? But it's great to have these sample apps because they truly give you a sense of a customer problem, a customer scenario, and then how technology could help solve those.
Oh, that's awesome. If anybody watching right now remembers Contoso.com, or if that is still the case,
I'm sure it
please
is.
leave a comment and get us up to speed on that, or what the latest MCSE
Or
is. I am
yeah,
not
or
familiar.
what other companies are using. I'm always fascinated, like, by Anthos Bank and things that Google folks are doing, and we're just bringing more and more of those things to the like all of these different demo apps are competing against each other in this marketplace of sample demo apps.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. Okay, so why don't we kind of talk about, so first of all, let me pop up one of the examples here. So we have this GitHub repo. So everything starts in a GitHub repo, right? We're gonna send people to that, and where do they go from here once they've pulled this up? What do you do?
Yeah, so we have let's just set the expectations. The GitHub repo is the place to follow along and from the beginning till end set up your experience with Volterra. However, these repos also include some scripts, such as the Terraform scripts that are needed to set up the infrastructure for a very representative customer scenario that I was talking about. So the guides themselves, and I'm not sure if you're going to be popping it up or not, and I can walk through it, or if you want, I
Sure.
can share as well, whichever one's the easiest thing.
Yeah, go for it, and then you can
You want
drive.
me to share? Yeah, yeah, okay, I'm going to do that. Just see, share my screen. All right, let's just see if I can. So let me know when you can see.
Yep, we're good.
All right, I'm gonna turn away towards my screen rather than speaking into the camera. But this is an example of one of these guides, and they are posted to GitHub to F5 DevCentral. And the guides includes some kind of deployment scripts, YAML configuration files for Kubernetes. And before I go into the depth, let's just talk a little bit about the structure of this. This fundamentally is, again, a representative guide to how to get started, but also to deploy an environment that could be used easily to kick the tires on the Volterra framework, on the Volterra platform, and a couple different use cases. And we're using this fictitious scenario of an e-commerce application called Buy Time Online. And if I were to visually show it, it's a kind of a boutique watch store. Uh, we've uh, we've we've built out and worked with F5 to come up with a couple of interesting representative use cases for this e-commerce scenario. But fundamentally, it's a application, typically of like a three-tier application that's been evolving slowly to microservices. And as this application is evolving to microservices, there are various questions that pop up. Questions about security, for example, protecting like a login. Questions about database. So there's a database of watches. And more recently, this company had a need to start adding a find a store functionality. So thinking about like what would that functionality be, and I'm going to fast forward to kind of the very end, just to show what does a find a store really do. A find a store just is quickly, quite literally just punch in a zip code, right? So if we just put something in kind of Redmond area, it allows us to very quickly find a location of stores. And you might think about this functionality as being kind of table stakes, but in the edge world, and kind of staying in theme or in step with the theme of the show, this functionality actually runs on the Volterra global edge or regional edge, which is part of the Volterra global network, meaning that this data is served from the regional edge location closest to the user. So if we were to expand this model to a global scale, you wanted to find locations globally or get inventory, for example, for an e-commerce use case, this data and this experience would be much more performance and delivering a much better user experience to the end user if it had been running in this regional edge location closer to the user. So the goal of the exercise is to start off with a starting infrastructure, which is a application that does not have this functionality, and it runs on a cloud. And this could be either running on Amazon. So this is the EKS based guide. So Elastic Kubernetes Service. It could
Yeah,
be
I
on,
can. Do you
yeah,
mind
sorry. Yeah,
just
sure.
bumping
Yeah.
up the text size on that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yeah, so this is the EKS guide right here. And this means that when we deploy an infrastructure, we're starting with an environment Amazon. But then there are also guides for Google. So this is the same type of guide to get started, but now we're starting with a starting point of this by time environment on Google GCP or Azure. So essentially, we took three clouds and said, "Hey, what would be a realistic starter point for this buy time environment?" And again, in the end, we're setting up this infrastructure in order to have a starting point, and a starting point having a database and a front end and a back end, all deployed on that cloud. In this case, I deployed mine on and when I say deployed, essentially just following the instructions. And again, I'm not super technical, but I was able to go through and say, what do I need for my prerequisites? Well, I need these things, which are the AWS CLI and Terraform and kubectl, etc., to control my Kubernetes. And I go through and essentially step by step configure the environment. And once I configure a couple things like access, like permission to create Kubernetes, Terraform does the rest. So there are Terraform scripts, and I'm scrolling a lot up and down, but I just wanted to show kind of the structure. There are Terraform scripts that are included with this project, and specific variables that you can configure, such as the regions where you'd like to have this stuff deployed. And once you run the Terraform scripts, you get your whole infrastructure set up for you. So, for example, in my case, it set up a Amazon EKS. It deployed the apps into it. It configured the database and everything else. And I was able to get, as you can see here, this is the FQDN for this application that was deployed on my Amazon. And from command line standpoint, I was able to, if I were to get services for my cluster, I can just see that this is the load balancer endpoint, and this is the FQDN for it, and it's been deployed and is available for me to be used. So again, this is kind of like the before state of the scenario, and the before state is what most companies that are running applications would do, is deploy one or more tiers of the application in different clouds, tie them in together. There's a database or some kind of Redis or anything else that is also added into the mix. And at that point, it's serving its data and it's doing its thing. But at a certain point, customers are starting to ask questions. Well, can we benefit, or customers or tech or line of business executives try to ask questions about improving that experience? And the first step to improve the experience is to find ways to offload those latency sensitive services to the edge. And that's, in a nutshell, if I were to look at one of the overview visuals. I'm gonna actually refresh this because it's a cool, fancy animated GIF that we're put together. This is the before scenario here, and users would go to the cloud to Nginx reverse proxy and serve the content. But we moved some components to Volterra global network, which is on the edge side, and we moved this critical service, which is latency sensitive. And this could be other things. Could be an API. It could be something that is storing state or catalog inventory. In financial services, it could be things like mortgage rates or stock quotes. Anything that is really truly latency sensitive. This is the kind of stuff we would like to see at the edge. And Volterra Global Network provides that capability by having the multiple locations across the world, super highly performing kind of locations. And some of these services, when you move them um, when you move them from a beginning state of running on a Kubernetes cluster, which is EKS in this case, and again we talked about having similar equivalents in Google and Azure as a starting point. You can take those container-based services and easily move them to Volterra Global Network, because ultimately Volterra is also all Kubernetes based and is essentially completely 100% compatible with all of the Kubernetes ecosystem. So we take the container from here and move it over to the other side, and then route traffic through Volterra Global Network and improve the performance, because now everything is flowing much faster and these services are serving up closer to the user. So, this, in so many words, this is the net of what these guides are. They are setting up this buy time online scenario, and then we actively actually go through, configure the services, and then move some services to Volterra. I'm going to pause here to give you some chance to ask any questions or clarify anything that may not be clear, and and then maybe we can just show you kind of what we've done in terms of the Volterra bits and what they look like in Volterra interface.
On mute, classic. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I was going to say was that, so for folks who look at this first glance, if you're not an F5 customer today, you have no contact with F5, you're just looking to play with this platform, by all means you can do that. There's a free tier of Volterra. You would just be on the hook for your cloud services, whatever the cost is to spin this up for a couple hours to play with it, or however long you want. But if you are an F5 customer, this is all stuff that if you contact your local F5 account team, you can get hooked up with them and they'll be able to provide you with the access that you need into Volterra, and they'll be able to provide you with some temporary cloud access as well. So you won't be on the hook for paying for this, and it can spin up and you have a greater amount of time without having to worry about it. Also, like if you don't have a sandbox environment for your cloud type stuff as well, you can mess around with this. It's all ephemeral, and then it can get torn down afterwards without you having to worry about cleanup, right?
Exactly. Good point. Yeah, and the Terraform scripts that I refer to, again, going back to the project, they're in this folder here. You can just go through, modify them, obviously, to fit your needs if you're familiar with how to do so, or just as myself, I did. I just walked through the guide and step by step. This is where we left off when I was showing them architecture, set up the environment. Go through and set up at AWS in this case. And again, GKE and Azure guides are also um, available there. And go through, and it literally is just following the instructions, and everything else gets deployed. So these are the Terraform scripts that are running, Terraform apply of the plan that is defined. And long story short, in the end, this is what you get. And it's really nice because we like guides, and I personally like guides that have natural stops. Like if you're climbing a mountain, you just want to have your your base camps at each step of the way, and you get a little bit of return. It's like, oh, cool, I have this now running. And in my case, I just showed it earlier. This was, oh, nice. It works. It's alive.
Mm.
And this is the starting point of this infrastructure that we set up in the cloud. The next step is all focusing on connecting the Kubernetes ecosystem on AWS, in this case, to the virtual Kubernetes, which is run on Volterra. And what is virtual Kubernetes? Its ability to uh, very easily deploy a workload across multiple regional edge locations, and these workloads could be anywhere here. So in fact, we have a map here on a site map, and what I'll do is actually, let's just see if I'm still logged in, and I'm just gonna do this real quick, and please ignore this. Bam. Okay, I am now looking at the sitemap for Volterra, and you can see there are multiple locations of the Volterra global network, and there are more. These are the ones that we're using. And when I go through and I create a site, what I do actually in this case, I am connecting my cluster that I just set up, which is the EKS cluster, into the Volterra site ecosystem. And Volterra is really interesting because it allows you to orchestrate and manage workloads across multiple clouds. So you can actually see here Azure, AWS. So my team's been working on some other projects, and you can see there are multiple clusters all here, and all are managed from a kind of single location. I can see all of the resources that I have available, and this is the cluster that I set up, and it was set up yesterday as I was going through this project. And I can secure these resources now. I can add policies. I can work on multiple different dimensions of ensuring that the data flows a certain direction. And from here, this is now we're kind of we've registered our site. We've done the kind of connection between the uh, different clusters. So in this case, you saw that there's this EKS cluster that I showed earlier. This is like a aha moment where it's green, it's working, it's all connected. The last step is to deploy the distributed workload, and this is our find a store service. And again, as I mentioned, the find a store service is the one that we wanted to optimize for performance. So under my applications, I can see that I have my virtual Kubernetes right here. This is the cluster that we are deploying to multiple regional edges, and these are the essentially all regional edge locations with Volterra. And all of this is done through the UI, through the Vault console. Very easy to use interface, and I was going through the instructions, just clicking on different things. And once we are able to kind of set up this Kubernetes, which just takes like a minute, then I want to be able to deploy a set of workloads to it. And the guide walks you through deploying the find a store service, which is here, and it's up and running. It's running across these 11 pods on the whole network. And we also deployed the front end of the application. So the new updated front end, which calls on this service, and all of the stuff is deployed and running on the Volterra global network. Now, through the guide, obviously, you get to this point, and then you ask yourself a question. Well, how do I then connect the stuff on the regional edge back to the AWS infrastructure or the GKE or Azure infrastructure that's set up earlier? And this is where Volterra provides the multi-cloud networking, really granular way to set up your load balancers. So, for example, your TCP load balancers to connect back to the database, or HTTP load balancers to connect the different services through HTTP interfaces. And again, the guides kind of walk you through how to do that. And there's lots of configuration. There's various different settings for different pools and for different ports. And I am not a networking guy. I just was kind of following the instructions, and it's pretty straightforward, well organized. But in the end,
Hmm.
once you create all of those connections, then you click apply a few times, and you get your kind of like your final application infrastructure. And this is the payoff, right? After going through all of these configurations, I get back to this point. I punch in the load balancer, FQDN, and I hit refresh, and then there it was, my new application with a regional edge deployment that was running this find and store service. And it's really satisfying just kind of
Mhm.
seeing how it works. And what we also noticed is that when we did run this just directly on the cloud infrastructure, it takes time to load. These are, we reduced the latency, by like 4 to 5 times
Mm.
improvement of performance, which translates into real dollars if you're in an e-commerce scenario. And as we know, companies like Amazon and others, they lose, literally billions of dollars for any additional latency that users experience. So moving something like this to a edge location only makes sense. So I kind
Absolutely.
of went through a lot of this, but in a nutshell, this is the structure of these guides. It's really giving a good idea of what to do, how to be able to use the existing cloud infrastructure with Volterra, and walks you through the experience. And again, this is, like you mentioned, easy to set up. There's a as a trial experience with Volterra, quick way to configure, and you can configure your virtual Kubernetes, connect the services together, and just follow the guides. And in the end, you get a nifty application that you can kick your tires on and get a hands-on experience and say that you are now an edge master and you live on the edge.
That's awesome. Thanks, Nick. It's one of those things where it becomes a lot more clear or a lot more simpler once you've done it. Like the first time I ever went through it, and I was admittedly, when we first acquired Volterra, I was kind of scratching my head on, how is this going to change things? And then I went through my first kind of exercise with it, and I was like, yeah, this actually it makes sense. And so I think once a lot of people run through this, thanks to your guys, and they're able to kind of visualize it and see it and touch it, I think that's going to give them that light bulb moment as well.
Yeah.
We are slightly over time, but I wanted to address this question here: bandwidth cap on Volterra endpoints. Now, this, I believe, there is some numbers on this. I'll have to double check on this. I don't know if you know
Since
the answer to this one, Nick.
not a Volterra product manager, I won't speak for
Yeah.
any of those points. I only know how to
Um,
break things, so that's my job.
I thought I'd seen this somewhere before. So Matt, if you actually want to drop this question into the YouTube, not the YouTube chat, but into the YouTube comments, and then I'll be able to reply to you on there, and then um, we can figure out what the answer to that is. But I think I've seen that documented somewhere, if I do believe.
Yeah.
Um,
All we
so
know is
that's
just when,
awesome.
in the real scenario, the performance was super high for us, and I know that their backbone the
Mhm.
Voltaire uses is crazy fast. We definitely have seen improvements for, like, latency going from 4 seconds down to 2 to 1.5 millisecond using the regional edge, which is 3 times 4 times better.
Yeah, and there's more and more of those popping up as well. I think there's a roadmap to bring many of those online. So I don't think I'm speaking out of turn there. All right, so I think we're good for today, Nick. This was a great example here. I love that you touched on the multi-cloud networking use cases as well, because the first episode of At the Edge was actually talking about multi-cloud networking. We had on also, there was a bit of a demo on that one as well, but people can kind of get their hands on it at this point and be able to play with it through this. So this is great. Any parting words, Nick?
No, again, Volterra has many different use cases. Something that you can easily kick the tires on is deploying a workload to regional edge. And since, this is easiest way to get started, highly recommend doing that. And then connecting between the services, this is where multi-cloud networking comes in. And again, Volterra is just really, really easy and very robust and very granular. So for regardless of whether you're on the DevOps side of things or NetOps side of things, give it a try. And again, you can also see the multi-cloud networking and all of those other use cases on the simulator that we talked about earlier, where you just go through and follow the prompts, configure them, and get started.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Nick. I will bring you off stage now, and I'll be back to kind of close out the show.
Thanks, Boo.
Yeah. All right. So that was a good time with Nick there. A lot of takeaways from that. So we've dropped the links to the guided walkthroughs. There's a DevCentral article, I should say, that has kind of everything that describes what's going on here. But The GitHub links are all pasted into the YouTube chat or the chats of the other platforms that we stream to as well. Otherwise, we will post those chats into the description of the YouTube video as well. I do want to note we have some upcoming shows here. So if you've seen some of the previous promotions for the November lineup, there's been a little bit of a switch around here. So this Thursday, we're going to talk through technology that we're thankful for. So I don't know the exact dates, but we're somewhere in between Canadian Thanksgiving and American Thanksgiving. A great time to talk about things that we're thankful for. I got one specifically that is something that saved me $400, 400 Canadian dollars in the past couple days here. So look out for that. I was very thankful for that technology. On the 9th, Security Sidebar with John Wagnon, we're going deeper into the dark web. So previously, he's had on John Cianferrani talking about the dark web. He showed a little bit of the dark web, but you know what? It's not something that we encourage everybody to go out and explore on their own. So what we're going to do is John's going to have his own setup where he's actually going to take people through, walk people through the dark web. So you don't have to use your own computer. You don't even have to go and set up a VM, a burner VM in order to do this. Somebody else will kind of show you what it looks like. Over on the 11th, the OWASP Top 10 has been updated recently. And so we'll be going through that on DevCentral Connects. And then the core on the 16th, Jason Rahm is going to be talking with, I believe, Kevin Stewart. So we got two experts when it comes to proxies and big IP going to have a chat about that. So that should be a great show. A lot of brain power there. On the 18th, we got the 2021 TLS report, which was recently released by F5 Labs. That's a report that they work on for all year, essentially. And they use a tool called CryptoNice, which is their own tool that does examination of encryption of a number of websites. I believe they went through the top 1 million websites and then gathered some statistics around that. David Warburton, the author of the report, is going to be on to share findings from that. And then on the 23rd, we have another top 5 episode. And this time, that one's going to be focused on F5 technology that we're thankful for. So that should be a good show as well. We always have fun on that one. Otherwise, if you like this video, hit like on the YouTubes, hit subscribe on there, and always you'll find us on DevCentral. And otherwise, we will see you all next time at the Edge.
This week on DevCentral Connects. You didn't have to make it, but you did, and you did, but you did. And I thank you. As Canadian Thanksgiving has passed and we're approaching United States Thanksgiving, Jason and Boo discuss technologies that we are thankful for and that has made a difference in our lives. Do you have a certain technology that you're thankful for? Join us Thursday, November 4th, 12:30 Pacific to let us know. We'll even bring you on the show. The link in the description sets your reminder. DevCentral Connects is live every Thursday, 12:30 Pacific. You got me trying new things too, just so I can keep up with you.